Welcome, welcome, welcome. The way that we're going to begin is we're just going to begin by taking a look around the room. And if you can, place yourself on video so that you can be seen, so that we can receive you for a few moments. It's great. And this is going to be an hour of really exploring who you are as a storied being. What does it mean to be alive as a storied being in our times? And what is our response able as storytellers? And particularly, one of the things that we're really looking at is how do we work with story as medicine? How do we understand that every time we speak story, we are acting as healers to our times if we hold that intention? So I want to invite you first, before we go into that. Hi, John. To look around the room, see who you're going on this journey with. Some of us are on video. You can take a look around. You can see
James, Walankins, Abadamshits.
that off. Um, and just for a second, just take a moment to notice what you see. Just take a moment to notice, what do you see in these people around you? Because you've already started making stories up. And so this is your moment. Nobody's judging you. You don't have to be politically correct. You don't have to do any of that. All you get to do right now is you get to be in the delight of being honest about what is your mind trained to see. What does your mind just automatically see? You know, it's so easy to start, and that's what's kind of wild, right? And because in Zoom we get to go into people's homes, we get to see things that we wouldn't normally see. So we're already contextualizing, we're creating a framework of understanding based on what we see and what we understand. So this is that moment to notice that and to not make it right or wrong, just to be alive in the witnessing of how our mind and our consciousness operates without our determination, without our consideration. Because now we're going to get to go on a journey of really exploring, well, what is the bridge and the distinction between where our mind can just go on its own and what happens when we become intentional with the stories that we tell, the stories that we create, the stories that we carry. So I invite you now to close your eyes and to get to go all the way into yourself. And imagine yourself, you've got this great big golden bubble around you. And imagine that you've got these threads of your heart energy that are out into the world, tending to all the things that you care about. And I'm going to invite you to call back all that energy, call it back all the way home into your beingness. And some of that energy might come to a specific part in your body. And some of you might actually feel like, oh, a little pulse of energy coming all the way home to you. And some of you might not. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. We're already beginning to attune to our intuition and our capacity as seers to see in the unseen realms. So allowing yourself to take in a nice deep breath now and breathing in from the bottom of your feet as if you could soak in the energy of earth into your feet, calling forth all that support, all of that energy, all that life force. This earth has carried many, many, many people before us, and it will after us. And to really be able to sense and feel and recognize that energy and feeling that coming into your body. I want to invite you to attune to your back and to feel all the support at your back. All of those who love you, who care about you, who tend to you. All those that you know and that you don't know, that you've seen and that you don't see. All those lives in your own lineage who have come before you, who through their life gave you life. Just feeling them at your back. And now I invite you to take another deep breath in and breathing in all the guards and the guides and the guardians who are at your side, those who walk beside you, your friends, your allies, your community. And just feeling what that is. people that are known and unknown, who are just part of the weaving of your life. And then exhaling that out as you're ready. And as you're ready, just taking one more deep breath, really feeling that you are supported from below, from behind, from beside. And that even there's a story that's in front of you that's waiting for you to step into it. But we don't have to be there right now. Right now, we can just be right here, aware of its presence, aware that it's there for us. I'm going to bring you a quote. In ancient Celtic lands, storytellers were magicians. They were initiates. They understood the underlying nature of reality, its hidden forces. The old Celtic bards could bring out welts on the body with a string of syllables. They could heal sickness with a tale. They could breathe life into a dying civilization with the magic of a story. To a thriving civilization, they could bring transformation with the potency of myth. In the old days, kings and leaders, warriors and knights listened to epic tales and drew from them courage and inspiration. That quote is from Ben Okri. And I'm going to bring you one more quote that seems more relevant than ever. We think we tell stories, but stories often tell us. They tell us to love or to hate, to see or be seen. And often, too often, stories will saddle us and they will ride us and they will whip us onward and they will tell us what to do. And we do it without questioning. I'm just gonna acknowledge the writer for saying that, but I don't want to perpetuate that idea that we do it without questioning. The task of learning to be free requires learning to hear those stories, to question them, to pause and hear silence, to name them, and then become a storyteller. That quote is by Rebecca Solnit. So here's the adventure that we're going on today. I'm going to introduce you to the landscape of what it is to be a sacred storyteller and really examining and approaching storytelling as a sacred art form and as a healing art. We're going to talk a little bit about what is a story. Um, we're going to talk about what is a medicine story and what does it mean to hold story as medicine. And then I'll introduce you to an incredible creative community called the School for Sacred Storytelling. And I'll be telling you about opportunities that we have coming up. So this is really designed to be an introduction class to the School for Sacred Storytelling and what we're up to. But we're in a pretty potent moment, to say the least. I'm coming to you as a resident of LA, of Topanga Canyon, who just went through, an 11-day firestorm and very alive in the destruction creation cycle. And what it means to be a storyteller in these times, and what it means to be aware that when we're in this destruction cycle, that now more than ever, we need conscious, awake, alive storytellers who know what it means to carry the story of our future inside of them so that there's a pathway to walk. And so that's one of the I just gave the spoiler alert, that's what the whole class is about. You know, if you get there, we got there together. There, you can end now. Okay. Um, and I'm just curious to hear from you for a second. If you can put in the chat, what's coming alive in you right now? I just told you what's most alive in me after, being through that storm. I'm curious, what's alive in you? And I'm just also seeing Rose, you're coming in from New York. We've got Kay coming in from California. Emma's coming from Canada. I just heard that Canadians have taken off all liquor from America off there. I'm sorry that you guys don't get whiskey anymore. Like the change that's happening. I mean, I'm being flippant right now, right? But there's a bigger change that we understand, and that we're all being influenced and impacted by what's happening in the world. Um, Betsy is coming in from Olympia, Washington. Pia is coming in from Berlin, Germany. So look at that constellation that we're creating. I always think about that. Here we are on Zoom in our rooms, and together when we join our energies in this way, we create this constellation of listening and sharing. Nobody's sharing what's coming alive for you, but I invite you to keep bringing it in. Rose is. She says, "What's coming alive in me is a new idea that we tell our future." Yeah, yeah. So I want to keep this chat room. It's a space that can be yours, just to share what's coming alive in you, and also what are you bringing into the room? What thread are you holding of our great story right now? That's another way of asking, what's the thread that you're holding of our story? And when I use this kind of metaphor, it's a really old metaphor, and it goes back to so many different associations with the weavers, and so many different um, cultures around the globe use that metaphor of weaving in terms of storytelling. That there are, the three sisters of, oh gosh, of fate and the future and destiny. I'm not getting that right. Pardon me for my not perfect memory right now, but we know that they're the three sisters that weave the world together. And so this idea of what thread are you holding right now, and understanding that a great tapestry is made of many different kinds of threads next to each other. John's coming alive with potency, support, the power of story shaping us. Laura is saying it's so deep a time. My own journey of displacement from fire. Sorry to hear that. Houselessness, and my own resilience, and needing to tell the story for my sake and others, and to make room for the new story. Laura, I just want to take a moment just to honor what you just said, and that um, after being in LA, one of the most powerful things that we can do right now, when someone's in so much change, I'll just explain my own experience right here. When someone is going through so much change, it can feel like, and for me, and Laura, you can tell me if it felt like this for you, the system gets very full. It's like the whole vehicle is like all of a sudden full with all these new different realities. And a lot of the old reality just got cut off. And the whole system is just like trying to rebalance and very, very full. And so, what happens when we come into a story and you allow someone who is in that like fullness of new life, of new change, of all this stuff, who's been discombobulated and cut off from what was, when we come into a space to talk story in these moments, you literally help them land their new reality. You help them anchor it in. So when someone's going through so much change, one of the most powerful things we can do as storytellers is to embark on the most important thing that we are as storytellers, which is story listeners first. The only way we can understand the story of our time is if we listen. We don't need to run out and tell it. The most powerful thing we can do is to listen. And so when you have someone who is in the bed of chaos, and what is chaos? But it's the place where creation comes from. It's where the new stories are born. What a thing to honor them and say, "Oh, creator of our new next story, let me sit and listen to you as you anchor in this new reality." And that's what the people who are going through these massive storms, these massive wars, these massive places of incomprehensible transformation, they're in the process of that destruction creation cycle. They are the ones that are living it first. And at some point, I might wager, many of us are going to experience this in one form or another. I don't say that to scare you. The storms aren't going to come to every place. But what we know is that we are in this extraordinary moment of change and transformation. I didn't lose my home, but I live in the same place that Laura does. And there's no way to be unaffected when that many people have loss. You know? And what someone just said, which was so profound, we were in a story circle in Topanga listening to each other, that that in that loss, something else can be gained. And if we can settle ourselves, and if we can quiet to the moment, then that new peace that wants to arrive can be received. but it's really in the stillness of listening. So I just mentioned this because, Laura, you're close to my heart. And as someone who's living it in a really lived way, I didn't understand till going through it. I understood it conceptually. Sorry, guys, the light is doing all kinds of weird things right now, and I can't make it better, unfortunately. um, but that I didn't understand until I was really living in it, that the power of listening in these moments is what's needed more than anything. And that it's such a gift. It is such a gift to receive someone else's story without interrupting them, without pumping them for information. Because what happens when we're in these in between places, just going straight into what medicine stories is without much of a pomp and circumstance, um, what happens is that we get to open our channels. And so, what is a sacred storyteller? But we get to be open to the unseen realms, and they can speak through us, through our stories. And that can only happen when we're in a listening place. And the thing about people who are in traumatized state is that their ego has been kind of knocked to the side. They're in this very kind of pure essence place. And I say this with a smile and with a tear, because you can't operate in the same way. But when creating this place for them to settle in and to anchor in what is real happening, what's really happening for them, then we get to hear and discover way more than we ever would have if we were glued and attached to the questions that we have from the place of what once was. If I can say that. Okay. Barbara's saying what's coming alive is I am so sorry. This light is driving me insane. I have to move. So it's not working on. Ah, just a little shift can make such a big difference. Okay. Um, okay, so what's coming alive in me, says Barbara, is that there is a story within me waiting to be told, first to me and then to the world. I really appreciate that process, that that this happens in multiple ways, and that sometimes we need to catch a story before we can tell a story. And there's a whole process to catching a story. Love that. And also just to know that sometimes we get to sit with stories before we tell them. Kay is saying the story tells us that there is a new story coming. Yeah. Elle saying that falling apart to create a new. Right. Jean is saying as a traveling New Yorker. Okay. Okay. Emma is saying the thread I hold of voicing as a woman is also held by my lineage and ancestors. Chickpea, what a great fun name. I'm feeling that phrase. We carry the story of our future deep in my body. It feels like a seed, like a warm glow, like a smile about to erupt across a baby's face. Beautiful. I'm holding the thread of hope, renewal, potency, and surprise. Um, Barbara's saying, love that we hold a thread of a bigger story. And Debbie's saying, I'm in Asheville. Okay, so you've got a story to tell, where we have experienced catastrophic destruction from water and mud as everything falls away and everyone has left us to deal with this on our own. It feels like a rebirth, as messy and painful as any other birth on this earth, right? And the metaphor, we can play with these metaphors because there's wisdom in them. In California, we're dealing with fire destruction, right? And smoke, what does smoke do? It clears out all the old spirits. It's a clearing energy. Um, but Asheville's dealing with water and mud, you know. And so, what is it to be in that element? And what is the genius and the brilliance of what is in that? And as storytellers, it's one of the things that we can do for people is we can bring them deeper into the language of story, the language of metaphor. What is metaphor? It's the language of spirit. And so one of the things that's so evocative right now is that we are being given the gift to come back into deep connection with the natural world right now. It's saying, we will not be separate. I will now be in your front door. The mud will be everywhere. The fire will be everywhere. We can't block ourselves off from it anymore. And so what happens when we get to be back into relationship with those elementals? What's the power? What's the gift? What can we hear that the original humans that knew how to live in balance on this planet, that they could hear, we're now being given access to? What a gift. Look, what did I just do right there? We're playing with framing. As storytellers, we give people a framework that they can organize around to make sense and meaning of the world that they're in. So, um, another person, Shayna's coming in from North Carolina. Okay. So, and Laura's talking about empathetic listening, right? So the grief, the terror, the disorienting can be witnessed. Yeah, I can find myself again. Right. We find ourselves through the experience of telling our stories and also witnessing and hearing other people's stories. So I went completely off script because what you guys said was so evocative and we're being so alive in the moment. I'll tell you a little bit, I'll just do a brief introduction to myself. Um, Obviously, you know, my name is Leah Lamb, and I hail from a very small town in Vermont. And we had one blinking stoplight and a 40-acre farm. And I was given the ability to go run wild in the streams and the trees and hang out with rocks and animals. And it was much more a part of my becoming than I would have ever understood until later in life. And what it did was it did give me permission and capacity to really listen and to know the natural world as friend and ally. And it would become much later that I would begin to understand this connection between nature and who we are as storytellers and understanding our own true nature and our place of belonging on this planet. Part of my story is that my parents divorced when I was very young, and I ended up moving almost every year of my life until I was in high school. And what that ended up doing was that I found stories and books as a place of escape. That would be my place where I could go and get out of the world that I was in. And that worked for many, many years until my best friend in high school committed suicide. And I went to that place of escape, um, not as one to go into someone else's story, but to go into the realm of story to make sense of my own story. And I ended up writing a play that won a spot in a playwriting festival. And I got to see the story on stage. And that's where I really learned the responsibility of storytelling, that what we put out into the world will come back to us. And so when I put grief out into the world, grief came back. And so it was the beginning of that deep understanding of that kind of boomerang effect. I began to understand the professional world of storytelling when I went straight to New York City and studied with Sandy Meisner's last class at Neighborhood Playhouse and really understood the professional realm of storytelling and worked at Williamstown Theater Festival, worked off Broadway. And I could feel that there was this energy that was happening in the space. It was this palpable energy. And I was really curious about what it was that we were creating and why did it just like disappear every time we opened the door and everyone left? I was like, what is that? I began to be really curious about the earth and the natural world, and I wanted to be part of the race to save the planet. I put that in air quotes now. Um, and I really wanted to be part of protecting the planet. And so I came to really a very young understanding that we can't save the earth if we can't save ourselves. So I got really into personal development. I ended up working with youth at risk. I got a master's in social work. And while I was on that journey, I came into my own absolute health crisis. And during my own health crisis, it's a longer story that I won't get into, but I will tell you this one piece. They had to cut across my throat. And not only across my throat, they had to cut across my larynx. And they told me that there's a good chance I might lose my voice. And so at this point of being 30 years old, for the first time, I understood that this thing called a voice was never to be taken for granted. And when I came out of that experience and out of that operation and back into health, it was this form of initiation that put me straight on my path. And it was like, yes, there was a love of the environment, and yes, there was a love of social justice and all of that. But really, the genius that wanted to speak through me was through story. And so I really began a devoted path for that without even understanding what that meant at the time. I ended up working with Al Gore and at his television network, Current Television, and I hosted and produced the Green Channel. And while I was there, I was operating under this idea that if we gave people the information they needed to move to inspiration, to motivation, to activation, then everyone would just get on it and save the world. And while I was there, I got to see the back end and all the data, and what the data was showing us was that people didn't respond to data. And when I went into these big rooms of people and we would talk about the state of the world and we would tell them all the stats and facts, being a sensitive being to energy, I would all of a sudden feel all the energy go from like, oh, interest and excitement up to all this to like, whoa. And I was like, oh my gosh, we cannot metabolize data. This is not how we make information. It's not how we make sense. We don't make sense out of information. We make meaning out of story. And that's one of the things that I got to see while working on all the websites was what people were connecting to, and they were connecting to stories. And that was my get out of jail free card. I was like, okay, if impact and influence is where I want to go play, it's not going to be in the media. It's going to be somewhere else. And I took that to a big prayer. I'm not going to go too deep into this story, but I did walk with a big prayer, and I said, "Hey, just show me the way. Social justice, environmental protection, human development, environment. Like, what's the thread? Like, how do I weave all that together?" And my prayer was answered with myth, magic, and medicine, storytelling for a new paradigm, and a story. The School for Sacred Storytelling emerged. And through this was this ability to really look at storytelling as a tool for transformation and as a tool that brings us closer to ourselves, closer to our community, closer to our environment, and closer to our true nature. And if I could make any argument or case in the world for right now, is that this is what might be needed most, is really having that liberated state of understanding that the true nature of humanity is good. It wants to keep living. We're designed to harmonize. And it's that disconnection that gets in the way of that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about how do we keep an eye out on the stories so that we can really see when are we in the presence of sacred stories that are in service to life and keeping life going, and when are we not. So, what is a story? Let's get a couple. Let's get a couple of things in the chat. Let's talk about what is a story and what is a sacred story. Let's put those in the chat. Let's hear what's going on. What is a story and what is a sacred story? So Rose is saying a story is a message that you feel for yourself. Rose, you're good. You're quick on the typing. You're a first. So for the sake of time, I'm gonna keep going, and your comments will come in. Your comments feed what we end up talking about, so it's really beautiful. What Rose is saying is it's a message that you feel for yourself. It's interesting because people don't often speak about the feeling aspect of stories. So you're talking about something, a story, it's embodied, and it's an embodied experience. Um, to speak very simply about what is a story, oftentimes we speak about stories in reference to the latest technology. So I'm going to do that. The story is an operating system, and it's a system where we learn our beliefs, our values, and what is possible. It tells us and informs us what roles we should play, what roles we shouldn't play. It tells us where we should see ourselves. And think about, the rom-com movies that you saw. Think about the stories that you heard around the table. What kind of belief systems did you inherit or pick up about money, about relationships, about work, about purpose, about what you could and couldn't do in life. And just take a moment to say, oh, am I living in the wake of someone else's story, or am I living in my own story? And just have a moment to wonder about that. Another way of looking at a story is that, when I was walking through Topanga Canyon, uh, the trees weren't having it. A lot of the inspiration that I received, I studied with a lot of great masterful storytellers, but I also a lot of the embodied understanding of what I know about sacred storytelling honestly comes from walking through the natural world. And the trees of Topanga Canyon said, "Ugh, that's a disgusting description of a story, Leah." And I was like, "Well, okay, what you got for me? You got something better?" And they said, "A story is the library of the soul." And I was like, "Right, Laura got that." It's a library, it's a soul. It's a participant in the evolutionary consciousness. You know, when John shares his story with me, I get to glean all of his life wisdom. you know and when we do the courtesy of sharing our wisdom stories, or sharing where we learned how to make a misstep and then crawl ourselves out of the hole, the next person doesn't have to go into the same hole. They can go experience the next one down the road. you know it's like we can really support and help each other's life experience when we are so generous as to share what we've learned. And so, right, they're a library of the soul, and they're bigger than us. If you are a believer that, this is a body, look at this, we all have these amazing bodies, this high technology, it's really incredible. And that this is made of matter, it's made of the biology of this planet. We know that it's got equal parts of mineral and water as the earth herself, right? And that there's a soul, the soul lives inside this thing. Right. And so our stories are, and then, that they're the expression of where the soul can share itself. And so when we tell our stories, now I'm jumping ahead, that they can be these, because Laura said that they're multidimensional living thing, you know, that our stories can be, we can tell the story of our human experience. Today I got up and I went to the post office, blah, blah, blah. Or we can tell the story of our souls. We can tell the story of, oh my God, blah, 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 with the latest whatever is happening. Or we can tell, oh, the soul on a journey. We can tell the story of, once again, I messed up and did this, or we can tell, oh, the soul that came to learn something. So it's like we have so many different ways of expressing our life experience. And when we can understand that our stories are so much bigger than us, when we start to tell their story from a soul perspective, it can actually lift us up to have another kind of human experience. So uh, right now, if you look at the news, says Chickpea, the story is a spell that directs the collective attention towards the tiniest fraction of what it means to be alive today. A sacred story creates an expansion from a contraction. How beautiful. Love that. Right. So we're at the time of great distraction. And what a great point. There's one story that's getting a lot of attention right now. And and yet there are so many other things that there are so many other stories that are emerging around us. One of my favorite examples is Paul Hawken talks about in Project Drawdown. He says that we have all the stories of if everything goes wrong, and we have all the images and all of that. But what about if we tell the stories of everything that everything of what everyone is doing, where everything could go right? So where are you putting your attention? What kind of stories are you amplifying? One of the pieces that we'll say is, the Hawaiians believe that words are so powerful that they can stop the world or put it into motion. Sicilians believe that the worlds poke holes in the universe. The Maori describe that in Japan there's a word called kotodama, and it means word spirit, and it means the energy of a word before it comes into us. And all of the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. So now, when you start to understand this ancient knowledge that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence, this idea of speaking the dream of our future, of speaking our future into being, you realize that is our responsibility. That is our response able. Are you response able to carry the story of our future? And are you response able to bring the stories that can heal, bring healing to our times? That's one of the questions I wanted to invite you into right now, is just to take a moment to think about, what are the stories that what's ailing you right now? Okay, what is ailing you right now? And then at the same time, I want to invite you just to think about, well, what would be the antidote? What would be the antidote to that? And meanwhile, I'm gonna invite you to write that, because you're gonna give me some food for fodder. Meanwhile, I'm seeing that Debbie is a sacred story told as a way to reconnect. I heard something interesting from a woman who suggested that one of the things we could do to help our land heal would be to help the trees that were left standing reconnect with each other, because so many were lost. We could do that by seeing the threads that run between them. Ah, it's beautiful. And that's one of the big pieces that we understand around storytelling, is that we're so humans focused, and so lonely in our humanness. There's so much isolation right now. And even as we tell the stories of what happened in LA, we say, well, 24 lives were lost. 24 lives were not lost. We will have no way of knowing how many lives were lost, because we don't have a way of counting the lives of the trees, of the birds, of the wild ones. And so we actually don't know what we lost. And perhaps that's one of the most discombobulating experiences of living there right now, is that so much is gone. We don't even have a way of accounting for it. And that's what we do when we tell tales. When you look at the etymology of being a storyteller, it's the tell. It's connected to accounting. And so when we look at, how do we help people anchor into our new reality, how do we help people tell the stories? As storytellers, we're the ones that have the widest lens, that can make space for as many stories as possible, so that we can understand the wholeness of it. Yesterday in Hawaii, there was a sound complaint, and the police went and they broke into the house where there was this complaint. And the woman that was in the house got really scared, and she picked up a knife because her house was being broken into. The policeman got scared and he shot her. And everyone's so angry at the policeman. It's an incomprehensible story, right? Can you imagine just being in your house and somebody breaks into it? And yet it's a story of trauma. Everyone in that story was traumatized. And what of that poor man who shot that gun? He's just as harmed and scathed as it's like, I don't want to try to make things equal. But when we look at stories, it's like we have this opportunity as storytellers to look at the wholeness of them, to see everybody's humanity. We get out of the story of right and wrong. We get out of the story of us and them, and we're the ones that hold the space for all of us. And so this is a time when a lot of people are spending stories of separation, of othering. And we know that's not going to work, you know. Have a good day, Rose. So This was a little bit of a let's be in the moment and what's most alive for us class. I didn't quite go through the exact curriculum that I normally go through, but what we did do is we began to understand what is it to be alive as a storyteller right now. And we began to understand that stories they hold the keys to understanding who we are as humans, and they will be the guides into out of the old story and into the new story. And when we're connected to the natural world, when we're connected to our own true nature, we're connected to another kind of genius, another kind of wisdom, another kind of insight that will itself guide us through. So when I think of what is a sacred story, we're saying that it's something that's alive. You know, we're saying that a story that's alive, that has its own life force, that has its own energy, and that aliveness is here in service to life. So when we talk as sacred storytellers, our stories will always have in them the breath of love. They'll always have the breath of companionship, of unity, of caring, of connection. And they might not use all those words, but somewhere in there, inside of you, as a carrier of the story in service to life itself, they'll have that. They can also have they can have wisdom. They can have courage. They can have hope. They can also be very daring, and they can take you to the edges of the darkest parts of humanity to show you, to warn you, but they'll always guide you back. And the sacred story will always hold beauty in it. It might tell you the most horrific things that people are capable of, but they'll always wind you back and feed your soul so that you might do something else, so you might have another way. So, right now, what we're doing is we are playing at the School for Sacred Storytelling in a program called The Alchemy of Story, really examining how to work with story as a tool for healing. Barbara's in there. And yeah. And um, and right now we've got a course called Medicine Stories coming up. And I'm just going to share this with you so that you see what's happening. And I've been I've been had the privilege of hosting the School for Sacred Storytelling now for since 2017. And each year the program evolves. What I would say is that this is almost like our graduate program. You know, not to say that you have to be graduate program level. It means that it will really give you an expansive understanding of how to work with story. It's the most comprehensive program we've ever delivered. And it is really focused on what is it to be a storyteller of our time? What is it to be a guide through the stories of our time? And so it's designed to give you these skills, these capacities, and also a really lovely community and a place to practice. And I think of the experience of telling our stories. It's a practice, just like meditation is a practice, just like being a lawyer is a practice. It's something that we go and we practice every day, and it brings us closer to ourselves and to the moment. And this is the other thing I would just offer as someone who just went through the experience of the LA fires is that you can't ever, I mean, you can have your your go bag packed, you can have your generator and you can have your water. Those are all very practical things to do to prepare for a crisis like that. But when it came down to it, the two things that honestly were the most important that I witnessed in my own self and in our community was that it comes down to um, who you are as a being, your daily practice, and your community. Having friends and having practiced the skills to be alive in the moment, those are the two things that I'll say I personally counted on the most and witnessed a lot of people coming alive in the most. Because in those moments when there's so much change and when things fall away, there's something else that wants to come alive. And when our channel is open and available to that, that's when the miracle of life can come forward. And I'll just say we got to experience that in our own community because it was our community that literally saved Topanga. So many people stepping in to take action. So many people came in not to be in the story that there was no one there to help us, but to literally create a new story in the moment that we had, that we were well resourced enough to protect our own homes. It's an extraordinary story. And so I'm telling you this because I'm living the medicine of the School for Sacred Storytelling and how powerful it can be to do this work. So this course is a 6-week course. We meet on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. from 11 a.m. Pacific time, 11 to 1. And that's with me. And that I will guide you through this process of really understanding how to embrace story as an actual tool for medicine, as a tool that can bring healing to our times. In this 6-week course, you also get to be with these 4 amazing guest teachers, and they come in on Thursdays from 11 to 1. And Jackie is coming in from Australia, and she actually works with folk tales. She holds some of the oldest ways of understanding that these old stories hold old medicine, a lot of old wisdom that many of us don't know how to access until we actually understand the story and how to receive it. Lewis is he literally wrote the book on narrative medicine, and he is part German, part indigenous, and studied with many, I believe, from the Lakota tradition. And he brings this really and really beautiful integrated approach to understanding how to work with story, literally in hospitals and the narrative medicine in our health and wellness, but also a much more deeper rooted understanding to the medicine of stories. Joshua, many of you probably know from the Emerald podcast, and he'll be speaking about mythology and how understanding our myths help us understand the world. And then we'll be with Lene, and she'll be bringing us again another Indigenous perspective on story as medicine. And I, I want to give you one little example of what am I talking about in story as medicine. Johnny, oh gosh, I'm not gonna remember his last name, but I'll try to share one of his videos. He was with us in one of our last courses, and he talked about when he was separated from the reservation that he grew up on, and how he he got very, very, very sick, and he almost died. So badly so that they had to send him home. He was in bed for months. He said every day his grandmother would come and tell him about this big, old, beautiful tree. And this big, beautiful old tree had these big branches, and she would wrap herself around this little being. And he said that every day she came and she told him the story, and that it was that story that saved his life. I'm telling you this because there's many different ways that we can approach story as medicine is healing, and some of them are linear, and it's about helping people to create frameworks and structure to make meaning of our times, to give people more context and ways to integrate and find their own sovereignty, their own power, their own life force, to determine the dream that they're holding and to create the pathway there. We can do that through our storytelling. But then there's this other way, this older way of being with story that's really about connecting to the unseen realms, to understanding that we can allow the myths to speak through us, that the metaphor can be stronger than anything literal, and that there are other ways that the energies that want to hold and protect us can be with us right now. And one of the ways that they can live through us is through our stories. So this is this course called the Alchemy of Story, Medicine Stories. It is we begin on February 18th, which is in just a couple of weeks. You'll be joining a merry band of some really incredible, potent storytellers who are also on this journey. And this course is part of a longer process in terms of the alchemy of story. So this is the actual last time that you can join us and get to be part of the full wheel. So I'm just going to show you that in just a moment. So if you're really saying, wow, what's going to hold me through these times? This program is designed to do that. This is the kind of program that is really designed to teach you how to work with story as a transformational tool, both in your own life and for others. And so if you know that you want something to help hold you steady, that you want a container to help you transmute, transform, and alchemize all the different energies that are moving through you and our collective at this time, this is literally the place where we are practicing doing that every day. And so what can I say? It's designed for these times. Um, you're going to learn how to work with narrative medicine in health settings and around others. You'll learn how to use the mythic imagination to call on story, to create a story, to bring healing to yourself. You'll learn how to engage earth-based practices in your own healing and storytelling process. You'll get to develop 2 different kinds of stories. And on our last day of class, you'll be part of a internal storytelling festival, and you'll get to tell your story to our whole course community. And so you'll have many different opportunities to be in the practice of telling stories. And our classes, Barbara can attest, I do not do this much talking. I come in, we do a little bit of teaching, then you guys do the talking. You guys go right into the practice, and you get a lot of opportunity to do and also to receive feedback. Um, I'm just going to show you one other thing. So again, these are our teachers, and what I'll do is I will place this into the chat box so that you have it. And the thing that I'll share with you is that everyone who registers today, and I love doing this because it's super fun. Everyone who registers today will be joined into a lottery to also receive a free soul story. So that's a private session with me at the value of $250. And it's a one-on-one story where you get it's like a story divination where you get to see and receive your story living in the mythic dimension. So for everyone who registers today, that you'll we'll pull the lottery tomorrow and you will know who won that prize. You can also trade it for a coaching session if you like that, whichever you prefer. But I'm going to show you what this is part of, because this course is part of a larger course, and I'm just going to try to. The Alchemy of Story is a journey unlike any you've ever taken. There, you can watch that all on your own. But what I'll show you is that this is part of a larger program. And so you can take just a 6-week class, or you can come in for the whole journey. And this is our next course will be called Change, which is all about working with story as a tool for social change. We'll go into Ceremony, which is a very kind of unexplainable course, which it really looks at how do you work with understanding that story is part of the gosh, I can't even explain this course, you guys. It is so otherworldly. It is such a mystical class. It's the most mystical class that I teach. So I'm not going to go into it right now. We go into essence, where you get to the bones of telling your own story, and you will come out with your own true story, both as as a mythic telling, but also as a way of just being able to tell the course of your life story. And then you'll also come out with a wisdom story. So this is a very comprehensive program where you'll come out with 5 different kinds of stories that you can call on at any different time that you want. And the last thing that I'll just mention, if you're someone that says, hey, I'm ready and positioned in my life to not only tell my own stories and do my own work, but I really want to help other people. That's what our certification program is designed for. And so this will be the last time that people will have an opportunity to join our certification program before it closes. And so this is, if you are interested, you can book a call right there, a discovery call, and we will get you set up and able to really learn about if this is your time to step in for that. And what the certification program does is it will not only give you the whole curriculum, but it also teaches you how to really step into facilitating and guiding others and how to work with stories, a tool for healing. So that is what that is. It's a lot of talking. I don't really like to talking that much in these classes, but are there any questions that I can answer right now? Yes, Laura's saying if we start with just the wisdom module, can we join the whole program after that? Absolutely. Any other questions? What I'll say is that when you do join the whole program, you get a reduced price. So you get there's a benefit to that.
And so I understanding that there's a class on Tuesdays and then a second class on Thursdays.
It's not every Thursday.
Mhm.
It is, the schedule's on our calendar and
Okay.
it'll say that.
I'll look
Um,
at that.
Yep, and then all classes are recorded. So all classes are recorded and then you receive that recording.
Yeah. But so the guest teachers, because it's part of my, now might be the time, because I've been tracking with you and being in the possibility for actually years.
Yeah.
Is those are all such beautiful people. I mean, I don't know the fairy tale person, but Lewis and Lynn Sane, and like, wow, what a gift to get to be with those beings, you know.
Yeah.
So they'll be doing live things on Thursday, and will it be at the same time frame, 11 or 10 to 12?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's 11 to 1 Pacific Standard Time.
okay, 11 to 1. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I'm gonna be signing up at least for the first part. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Yeah, thanks so very, very much for beautiful integration of the mystical and practical and whatever. Beautiful. Thanks so very much. And the question is, how technically I can sign for the whole program or for certificate? How they relate to each other?
Yeah. So the whole program, everyone goes to the whole program, and we meet in each module is 6 weeks long, and then we take 2 to 3 weeks off in between the modules, so you get some time to recalibrate. And we take a chunk of time off during the summer also. The certification program does all of that, and then we also meet once a month, and we go into not necessarily talking about story, but what it is to be a facilitator, what it is to be a guide, what it is to hold people through these times. And so you get more time to practice, actually facilitating and guiding others and get a lot of feedback. So in the facilitation program, we have what's called a practicum, where you'll have an opportunity to create your own facilitated experience working with story as a tool for healing, and you'll get a lot of feedback from that. And then you'll also do a mini like your mini 10-minute TED Talk webinar version of what is story for healing, and you'll get to do that to our whole community and again get feedback for that. So it really helps people step into their mastery of what they understand and know and how they hold story as a practice and as a tool for healing.
So the registration for the whole program is open right now. And
Yep.
if I register, it also includes automatically the medicine, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Good. And the sign up for the whole program is on the website.
Yes, yes. And if you choose to, again, I'll just say this, if you choose to pay in full, what we do is we do that a slightly different way, because we'll save you a couple $100 by not going through credit card systems. So if you want to go through our website, that's all good. And if you say, oh, I want to pay in full and not be in that system, then we go through Zelle or Venmo. That makes sense.
And for that, how do I get on that? Should I send you email or there is access to?
Yeah,
email?
you just send us an email. I'm sending you the email right here. There you go.
Thank you.
Katie is there, and she helps with all things logistics.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for us today? Barb, do you want to share anything about your experience of being in the course?
It would be my most honored. I came to the course as an artist that's been focusing on art and healing, specifically dolls, which I now realize are the characters of the stories that I tell. And so I can honestly say that this program is changing the way I function about how I think about what I have to offer the world and what are the stories that it helps me set boundaries. It's so rich that at this point I feel like I've plugged into some kind of sacred wormhole, and I get woke up at 3 a.m. with an idea that will not leave me alone until I write it down. And I go, what is going on? Well, it's powerful, it's safe, it's playful. I'm so glad I signed up for the whole thing. And that was a mistake. And I found myself all of a sudden I've signed up for the whole thing. So I think it's just a rich experience. And Leah's got so many stories that there's always a story for that, right?
There is. Well, I'm going to leave you guys with a quote. Thank you, Barb. I love having you in there. And one of my delights is getting to see Barb's incredible creations. And I think that's the beautiful part is you get to know people in so many different ways. In terms of we get to learn who we are as storytellers and as beings, and so many people have um, so much to bring. I learned from everybody that's in this space. I'm gonna leave you with a quote, and then we'll sign off for the day. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium, and it will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep your channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself for it to work. You have to keep yourself open and aware to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. That is Martha Graham, the grande dame of modern dance. May you dance through your days with grace and some great moves. And I'm going to turn off the recording now. We can all say, have a great day, and if anyone wants to stay longer and just has more specific questions, I'm happy to stay on and talk to anybody. So let's all give a good farewell. Have a lovely day. Bye.